Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A session for the status quo. Happy to have you here. We have 1 hour session on question you may have before the closure of the ongoing status quo for cross-border renewable energy project. For those who are not familiar with the setting, it is about posting questions on the Slido that you have received also for the registration, and as it goes, we will try to answer to all of them to the maximum extent possible. If any questions needs more inquire or more complex cases, we will park them and we will come back to you in writing via an update of the FAQ. That's the usual way we proceed, and as soon as there is a revised, updated FAQ available online, we will notify to the registered participant of this Q&A, and we will put it anyhow publicly available in the call webpage. So, as said during the invitation, we will give priority to already posted questions, but as also said in the same communication, don't hesitate to go ahead with your questions and post it as it goes. We have 1 hour, so we'll try to cover all of them. And if anything remains unanswered, we also come back in writing. I'm Gianluca Ferreri, head of the Renewable Energy team in CINEA Unit B4. It's the unit that is dealing with the cross-border renewable energy program, and I'm here with all my colleagues from unit, helping you to hopefully clarify any outstanding doubts. Just a reminder, the call deadline is on the 6th of February and is to be submitted via the dedicated web platform that you will find the link in the call page. Also connected with us is Vasil Stoino from DG NR, from the European Commission, and he also will be a valuable help to answer any points, and hopefully this Q&A session will help you to really clarify all final doubts you have. You have basically a good 2 weeks, a little bit more, to the call deadline. So it's the final sprint. Hopefully that will be helpful for you, and good luck with your application. So with that, I suggest we just start. We have already a long list of questions on Slido. You'll see the QR code on the screen, or you can join it also via typing in your computer slido.com and hashtag CEF Energy CBRS, so you can see in the screen. So let's get started. The first question is about environmental aspects. So what level of details is to be provided in relation to the environmental protection concern from a project that are a bit conceptual, still a bit in the early phase, or considering that the environmental aspects are part of the feasibility study. So we understand that the maturity of the project, the level of details you may have at status quo may vary, first of all, between projects, and it's in general indeed a bit far from the concrete implementation stage. So there are a lot of details that you still need, and eventually also aspects like those one on environment. So just clearly and transparently explain what is the state of play, whether there are aspects that you still don't know, you don't have data on, and whether those are foreseen, for example, to be covered in a feasibility study or in a coming study, and give us the latest state of play. If you have projections on reference data, for example, from the sector, considering similar project or already existing project in that country, for example, in that given technology, this can give you some data, some projection on there. So don't hesitate also to make reference to that, to existing literature, existing statistics from at European level or your national level or your own company. That could be a good way to compensate the lack of data of this at this stage. At the same time, remember, if you do that, and in general, whenever you cite data, cite also your source, and if it is the publicly available source, give also the reference so that evaluators can verify and can know about where this data is coming from. Otherwise, we could perfectly understand if there is aspect of the project that is part of a future study and is not in the status quo at this stage. I hope that's clear. If not, come back in writing in another question. The next question, and of course, the colleagues in the room, just step in if you want to complement to my any answer I give. Please explain the counterfactual again. So what happens when one member state cannot do it alone? So there is no next realistic alternative for this project. So that happens often, and well, there can be various strategies. The idea is to call the counterfactual is to compare a project that similar project that would be done without the cooperation. So one way to say that it cannot be done without cooperation, it might be about the technology. It might be about the size, for example. So this is the first thing maybe to clarify. It could be that that member state can do it alone, but in a smaller size. That could be one option, but needs to be justified. Or it could be that technology is not possibly available by for example, for the contributing member state. And in that case, there might be various possibilities. One possibility is to consider another technology. For example, if we talk about offshore wind project for the CBRS project, we can have a counterfactual that is about onshore wind, for example, if that's feasible for the case specific in question. So these are the kind of strategies. In the end, ultimately, the counterfactual is an important exercise that is really to be justified by you as promoters. So whatever strategy you take for the counterfactual, we really insist that is your argument and your reasoning behind is clearly explained and can be followed, so that the expert can make themselves an opinion on that. I don't know if Vasil, you want to comment on this very specific point.
Yes, good morning, all colleagues. My name is Vasil. I work in the European Commission together with the team in CINEA on this program. So yes, what happens when one member state cannot do it alone? The next realistic alternative would depend really on the context of the project. So as Gianluca said, the CBA methodology is not that prescriptive, but we need really a solid justification on what could happen in reality if similar project would be developed in reality without the member state cooperation. So I think it depends whether the project has a physical link. So if it's a physical link, then some project which is again located on the near the border, or a project that could replace the project that is applying could be a solution. Then if the project does not entail physical link between the countries and it's about a virtual link, then it should be explained how the member state that cannot do it alone, why it cannot do it alone, and what could otherwise could happen. So the justification here is the most important part, and also the project needs to be as similar as possible so that we compare apples with apples and not simply go into a very theoretical direction. So this could depend on the national context, for example, the availability of land in the country or the availability of the specific renewable resource. So all those factors need to be taken into account. Thanks. Gianluca, back to you.
Thank you, Vasil. Hope that's clear. So we can go to the next one. And that's very related to the previous one. So it gives us the opportunity to stress again. First I read the question. It is strictly necessary for the counterfactual to be similar in size. What if the lack of cooperation results in technical inability to create a larger project? I think we had typically this is one of the options for the counterfactual. Indeed, with the cooperation, you may, for example, have a wider area or accessible, suitable area for the renewable energy to be installed, whereas without cooperation, you have more limited capacity in terms of, for example, of land availability or suitable area. So, indeed, if that's one of the case, or your project, it could be that you choose for counterfactual to be in different size. It is not the default option. I think you should not simply choose a smaller project because it is done in a member state without cooperation. You really need to explain in that case that there are objectively obstacles to have a similar project, but that can be indeed one of the situation. Vasil, on that?
I would complement that when we refer to similarity in terms of size, we don't mean precise equation of the size. So if the project is of capacity of 1 gigawatt, it doesn't mean that the counterfactual absolutely necessary needs to be 1 gigawatt. It needs to be similar in size in this specific context. So if the if the lack of cooperation does not allow to create the same size of, let's say, 1 gigawatt, but the maximum available size without the cooperation could be, let's say, 800 megawatts or 850 or something rather similar, then I think this is still justified. If, however, without the cooperation, it is absolutely impossible to create anything similar in terms of size, then probably the counterfactual should be a different, a case-specific counterfactual. Thanks.
Thank you. And we go to the next question. So for a CBRS project taking place only in the EU member state, do all applicant needs to be legal entity established in the EU member state? That hopefully it's an easier answer. The answer is no. So there can be also applicant coming from a non-EU member state at this stage anyhow. So there's no specific restriction. But of course, that needs to be justified in the sense that the applicant are there if they are able to push forward the project. So if they have an ability to implement it in one way or another, so they have a role. But that's the basic principle of establishment eventually a consortium. So we are talking about the status code here, so the CBRS status code. I'm not talking about if you acquire a status. In that case, then you may be eligible for applying for CEF support, and there are specific eligibility rules. So there are more restrictions there. You may have participants from third country, but there are specific conditions in the CEF regulation that you will find it also in the given call. So, but for the sake of acquiring the CBRS status, there are less. This is more flexible. So the question here is more about the first element of the CBA, the cost of energy. So it is about non-eligible items such as land or maintenance, capex in the cost of energy generation. So whether to include those in the calculation of the cost of energy generation in the CBA. So you should include whatever element that is to be included in calculating the LCOE. First of all, so investment cost and operational and maintenance. So technically, we distinguish between investment cost and maintenance cost. As regard to land, indeed, land is not eligible in self-support. Normally, it's not part of a LCOE calculation. So, in principle, you should not include the land unless in your calculation and your argument you explain clearly that that needs to be done. But in general, it is not included as a LCOE, and it's definitely not eligible for and eventually CEF support in case you acquire status and you apply for CEF call for studies or works. Let me go to the next one. That's also kind of related. A non-eligible component of project excluding funds for related studies or infrastructure of that segment. You might need to reformulate to fully understand, unless Vasil, understand it better than me. But let's first have a general reply. If something is not part of CBRS status, in general, a component that is not included in the CEF status, in CBRS status, should not will not be normally part of an application for CEF support later on. So what I mean is that the CBRS project status may have a wider scope than what you actually may request for funding in the CEF works and study call. It's unlikely the contrary, meaning that something that is not part of the CBRS status may end up in being supported in CEF calls, unless there are specific cases where, for example, there are specific calls open in CEF, CBRS, works and study that are synergy calls, for example, that combine different elements, but this is not has not been the case so far. But that's really specific situation. So in general, that is the rule. Yeah, anything to add, Vasil, on that one? Or
no, I would confirm that if something is outside the scope of the status, it is also outside the scope of the funding. And the scope of the status is defined first by your application and second by a technical documentation, which is linked to the delegated regulation that establishes the list. So even if in your application you list some components which we consider as not eligible as part of the scope, and your project is nevertheless accepted, then the technical documentation will further limit the scope of your project. For example, it might exclude interconnectors because this is not an eligible component for CBRS. So even if you include it, our technical documentation will make it clear that the interconnector is outside of your status. This would mean that also further applications for funding related to the interconnector will also be included. So indeed, the scope is the limit. The scope of the status is the limit of the scope of the financing.
Thank you. Good point, Vasil. And in case you want to see how does it look like, this technical documentation is available for the current project published in the CBRS list. In case we haven't replied to the question, just please reformulate and we'll come back to that. So it's a project of renewable generation plus green hydrogen and LOHC production in a EU member state, and transport and reconversion to hydrogen in in other EU member states eligible for CBRS status. In principle, I don't see any problem for that. I mean, we do have also already existing project on similar concept, not exactly the same, but green hydrogen can be part. Green hydrogen value chain, so to say, can be one of the type of project that can acquire the status. And often they do have indeed all these elements of transport and reconversion to hydrogen in other EU member states. So the basis of the CBRS is that the renewable energy component is central, is a core component as defined and specified by the, let's say, the CBRS Delegated Act. So that's really the starting point, and all other components are ancillary and integrated to the or facilitate, enable the integration of the rest generation into the grid. This said, doesn't mean that these elements are then eligible for funding. So one thing is the CBRS status, and another is the CEF support. It could be that your whole project that you submit for the status contains many elements that are finally not included though in the technical documentation, or they are included, but where it is specified that this is not eligible. So in this sense, you may give a wider picture, but that finally the final CBRS project that is labeled as such in the status call and in the future CBRS list as a narrower scope, so to say. I hope it was clear. Vasil, you want to add on that?
No, very good. This can be a good example of an application which, as a project concept, is can be accepted for status and can be included in the list of the status, but the technical documentation supplementing the list will specify which elements of this big value chain project will be included in the scope of the status or not. And in this case, I think it's clear in the example that you referred to that infrastructure related to the transport of green hydrogen is not eligible. It's not part of the CBRS projects as defined in the CEF regulation and in the Delegated Act. So clearly, shipping and loading and transport of green hydrogen will be outside of the scope of the status. Nevertheless, since this is part of the idea of the value chain project, this can be included in your application, and you can also justify it and explain it. It will be actually good. It will give added value to the project because it will explain the whole value chain. Nevertheless, keep in mind that the fact that you have a project concept doesn't mean that the project as a whole will fit into the status, so that the two are in line. On the contrary, the status may be a bit narrower, and can include only those elements which are eligible.
Thank you, Vasil, for the extra element. And indeed, you will see in the call text this element brought forward in the sense that these are really listed, the elements that are not eligible for status, but if it gives you the full picture of the concept, that is good that you explain the whole elements, and then eventually it will have a narrower scope as a CBRS status. Okay, I hope that's clear. That's also related if rest generation and LOHC production in a new member state is eligible, but transport and reconversion to hydrogen in other EU member states is not. How is cross-border scope demonstrated? I think we kind of answered to the previous one on this. So you can have those elements in the global concept of your project, knowing that these elements are not eligible, the transport elements, and that simply because of a policy focus on the CBRS program really on the elements of renewable energy generation, and there are better programs to cover the elements on transport, for example. So that would be my short reply. Vasil, maybe you want to complement?
Yeah, in the section of project description, for example, in the application form, there you have to very clearly specify how the project will function and how it could operate, including the transport and the reconversion. But these elements, they're first not related, for example, to the LCOE or to the other elements of the CBA, and you don't need to justify how those elements could fit into the scope. It's clear that they will not, and you don't need to make distinction between this. So we, in our assessment, will distinguish which of the elements are eligible or not. But for us, it will be important indeed to demonstrate the cross-border scope, including through these elements in the project description aspect, and also in the aspect which you justify the objectives of the project and the general context.
Thank you. Next question. Is there a further administrative process past the EU login as with obtaining a PIC for funding internal portal? And when do cross-border member states have a joint project, is there a common account? So as for the first question, no, once you have your EU login account, you enter in the platform and you can start basically drafting your project. From that on, there's no further administrative steps like, I don't know, validating your peak or other elements that you may have to do in the funding and tender portal. This is a specific portal for the status quo, so works with different also procedures, so to say. And as we are not financing yet at this stage, let's say the overall process it's a little bit less complex. Regarding the account, there's one account you cannot share. Let's say you cannot have two different users drafting in the system. That's technically not possible. What you can do is to download the Word version from the platform, where you have all questions drafted as to the point when you download it, and then you can jointly work on a shared Word document offline or on a shared platform with between your partners. And ultimately, when you are kind of ready with your version, you can then the person who has created the project, the account with the account that was created, can populate the platform. This said, I don't know if you have already worked on the platform. The part that you need to directly populate in the platform, it's fairly small. The rest, it's really about the annexes, Annex 2, the CBA calculator, and the other annex. So you can fairly, the majority of the action will be done outside the platform. So yeah, you can share, you can find your best method, and then simply upload those documents there. Have a look at the size limits in the annexes. There is a size limit, so see how much in terms of megabyte, and so because otherwise you may have difficulties at the last minutes to fit into the system. And if you have any trouble with the system, get in touch with us and we will help you. So when the list is supposed to be published, and will you also indicate the link of the last call succeeded list? So for the expected publication, we have a indicative calendar of around June to have the letters that you receive with the result, but then for the publication and the entry into force of the new list, so the legal entering into force of the list, we will need to wait approximately until mid-October, all process included. And the main reason being that at the end, once the new list is adopted by the Commission, it will enter into a 2 months scrutiny period or non-objection period, during which the Parliament or the Council can scrutinize the list. And there is a technical time frame this time round, because there are European elections, so the new Parliament will enter into operation somewhere in June. So all this needs to be accounted for in the planning. So expect the result in early June probably, but the entering into force, legal entering into force of the list, rather in mid-October. Knowing that, we always ensure that the new project in the list may also apply to the next works and study call. So it means that also the next works and study call will be launched around the same planning, mid-October. So, but you will have already your result in June, so have plenty of time also to interact with us on the next step. The second question about the new the project that succeeded, so they are all available. The list is the best way to access is to go to the CBRS transparency platform, and the link, you'll find it in the CBRS website of CINEA. It's fairly easily to be found, but if you have difficulty, just drop us an email and we'll send you the direct link. There you'll find the basic information about the project and also a visualization on the map of where this is located. So the 5 projects so far. Now, a question about letter of support. Must be a single document signed by 2 member states concerned. It can be 2 similar documents, each signed by the state concerned. This is really up to you. So if you have one single document, you upload the single document. If that's not possible or not the preferable option for whatever reason, might be complex, might be technically impossible, you name it, it's really up to you. What is essential is that if you have more than one document, each document refer clearly to the same project and is signed by the competent authority. The rest, in terms of forms, we leave it completely free, knowing that if you don't have already something and you don't know where to start, there is a template which is not mandatory. It's just for you to use it if you need it, and you can download it from the core page. So here is in case the letter of support is signed only by one of the 2 member states concerned. What happens in that case, in case you submit such an application with only one letter, is that there will be a preliminary check, a sort of completeness check on your project, and you will receive a warning or a communication saying that we are missing one of the letter, and in that case, the practice of the call so far is that we need this letter of the other member state by really at the latest, the moment that the decision is taken on the selection. We will indicate the exact planning at that moment. So strive to have all the letter by the deadline. In case you don't have it, we will communicate that you are missing some letter with the next steps. So, but in general, we need all the letters. So if there are 2 member states concerned by the CBRS project, we need the signature of the 2 member states. We are more flexible on the level of so the person that signed. So it's up to you to judge whether this person or ensure that the person signing can commit the administration or the member state in question. So in terms of which grade of seniority, if you want, the official, the public servant, or should have. This aspect is also covered in an FAQ. But the fact that the two or more should be signed, that's a requirement, at least two member states. Okay, here question is more about how much budget could a project receive. That's a little bit of crystal ball. The only thing we can say is the expected maximum total budget of the program, which is expected, and again, it's not even a hard figure, but it's for the CBRS project. There are about 15% of CEF Energy budget flagged or allocated to be allocated for CBRS, so about 875 million, subject to market uptake. It could even go up to 20% if there is a strong interest and if that's decided in this way from the Commission. This said, the single project, there is no threshold or maximum for studies or for works. What I can advise you is to look at the already approved project to have an idea. We have project on studies from as low as 2, 3, 4 million to even 20, 30 million. We are talking about big studies. We don't have yet works project approved. Normally, here you can expect a higher budget, but the magnitude of the project, it's impossible to say on the specific project itself. So how can we increase the accuracy of cost estimation of the aspect out of LCOE? System integration, cost of support as an example. Well, I think for the system integration, you have a lot of guidance in the staff working document, but also in the PowerPoint presentation we have presented in the info day for this call. I invite you to have a look in case you didn't participate to the info day. It's all available online. There are typical elements to follow there. System integration, it's also about existing data from the grid provider. Cost of support, it's really about essentially considering all cost or all public support you will ask for this project. So that's rather straightforward. Other elements like security of supply, you have also quite a simple calculation. So consider basically in the methodology we consider basically all all energy produced in the CBRS project as substituting by the factory import of energy. Elements like that. If you don't have specific data on your specific project because it's early in the stage of the implementation, you can always refer to benchmark data from the sector. So from studies present in International Energy Agency or IRENA or the Investment Bank, European Investment Bank. You have often publicly available data that benchmark similar technology to your in the given member state. Especially in Europe, you have really a lot of data. So I think that can be really the strategies that you may follow as a minimum. Then, of course, if you have a possibility to do market inquiries to potential suppliers, for example, considering especially the evolution of prices, these are also elements that you can use. And if you do, please explain it in your narrative of your project. Vasil, any other idea?
No, nothing to complement.
Okay. Hope that helps. Next question. So when we apply with a project with a feasibility study in mind, what do we need to put in Annex 4? We will comply with the DNHS and environmental laws. So the Annex 4 is about environmental elements. Well, there, again, probably you don't have a lot of data already available at that stage, so simply report the latest state of play. So again, if you don't have anything specific to your project, you may refer to expected elements to be impacted by your project, looking at similar technology or same technology, similar size of project, or existing project on the field. And you can already delineate what are the elements that you will carefully consider, and what are the strategies that you prefigure to follow to respect those elements. And then again, it's possible that you don't have a lot of concrete element at this stage, and that's something that will be considered for the if you are selected in CBRS status for as an element of monitoring of your progress of your project in this aspect. Basil, any point? No?
No, nothing to complement.
Okay. So could you explain the level of details you expect to receive as an answer to the question in Annex 2? Annex 2, so it's the narrative element that reports basically two main sections, one on the technical aspect of the project, which is but before that, there are questions on the wider element or background, like the market, the evolution of the market, and the context. Then the technical specification of the project. There are element questions on the cooperation agreement, and then there is the one by one the CBA element. So when it comes to the first part, we really need to understand your project. That sounds maybe trivial, but in the end, that is what it is about. So depending on the stage of the implementation of your project or the conception maturity, if you like, you may have more or less detailed element. There is no maximum characters in the document, in the boxes, so you are free to be more or less detailed, but you need to ensure that in your answer, basically the key elements are explained. So, of course, anything that is about the technology, the type of renewable technology, but if you have already more technical details on for example, if we are talking about solar project, what are you looking to implement? What type of generation of solar PV are we talking about? We're talking about traditional type of panels. Are we talking about bifacial or elements like that? If we talk about wind or onshore or offshore, what are the components you expect to use? All these details you may have or not, depending on the project, but if you have, just include it. And when we talk about the CBA, so the 7 element, there we are looking to the Annex 2, it's there to help you explain what is the reasoning behind your calculations, because in the Excel you simply put the calculations. So in the Annex 2, you can, for example, for the first element, explain why did you choose those elements to be calculated, and why did you exclude other if you excluded others. What are your sources of calculation? Is it your own sources? If you have your own sources and you have publicly available study, you can attach it in the annexes. If it is external sources, you make reference to it, you include links. These are the type of elements you can include in Annex 2, so that the evaluator, when it goes to your calculation in the Excel, understands by reading the narrative part what is the reasoning, where the data is coming from, how can I verify it, and so on and so forth. So that's really there to make your case in a way, in the most transparent way. Now we are not looking to receive 800 pages, so we are still talking about something, well, if you want to use a reference, for example, in the CEF call, you have maximum 120 pages typically. In other calls, you have it in less. We expect a bit less than that. On average, we had Annex 2 between 50, 60, 70 pages, sometimes a little bit less. So just to give you a rough range, but again, you are not. There's no punishment if you are succinct and short, provided that you are clear and verifiable, and that's the principle basically. So you don't have to make it over complex, but that's really up to you to decide the range. So yes, we're always there to help. So the question is about any other further channel to consult. It's the functional mailbox. So CINEA Renewable, this is the functional mailbox that is indicated in the call text. So don't hesitate to get in touch, or previously look at the FAQ, because that's already very long FAQ of more than 50 questions and answer, I believe. So your answer might be already online. So do this first effort. Maybe it's already answer in between the lines of the call text. So look at what is publicly available. You can look back at the PowerPoint presentation of the Info Day, the recording of the Info Day, and the future updated FAQ if we publish any update on that. But if you don't find the answer there, you can get in touch with us. Bear in mind though that we cannot advise. We cannot do counseling on single projects, so we are not gonna advise you which element to include in a LCOE calculation, or what type of best setting of counterfactual. But that is for equal treatment reason. But if you have doubts on any of the elements of the call, we may be able to answer. And if we answer to an interesting question that is not already tackled in an FAQ, we will also update the FAQ for anybody else. So that's the main channel. Yeah, one point is also that, of course, try to not to wait the very final days before the deadline, because of course in that case, first of all, we might not be able to answer you in time, and secondly, we will be more prudent in answering to you. Because we need to first assess whether others can access to the answer in case you receive an answer. So again, for equal opportunity. So the deadline is on the 6th of February. So I would discourage any question at least in the last week, so 6th or 5th, by Friday maybe. But of course, if you have last-minute questions that are really linked to, if you are unable to submit for whatever reason, for any technical reason, of course, we are there to help you until the very last moment, knowing that, of course, if you contact us the minutes before the deadline, you might be able not to get the answer in time to solve your problem. The platform is not complicated, but the advice is always the same. Don't wait until the last couple of days to start working. At least start working on it as of next week, for example, if you haven't started already, so you can already see if you have any problem, then you anticipate those. So in case we see a formal defect or issue or problem in your application that you submitted, the question is whether we have the opportunity to change that, to remedy. This is not possible during the assessment. But if there is a obvious error, this will be considered in the evaluation. So meaning that the evaluator can take that into account. So, but we will not come back to you asking you to revise, for example, the CBA calculation in case an error is detected at this stage. If you are selected, then of course there will be the possibility to change any element, provided that of course these do not put into question the decision of the selection itself. Is there a limit of extension in Annex 1? So I presume in terms of size, yes, this is indicated in the platform. I can't remember by heart. I think we are talking about 50 megabyte, but if you log in, you will see it is indicated. Normally, it's more than enough, especially for an Excel file. Just be careful, maybe more for the Annex 2, Annex 1. It's the Annex 2, the narrative, because sometimes applicants include pictures, for example, and these are often very heavy in terms of size. So do some tests on that. But yes, there is a limit for actually any annex. So each annex has its own limit. There's nothing else. Okay. Okay. Well, we still have 8 minutes. Maybe I suggest we stay online until 11 or 7 minutes now, in case there are last minutes questions. We did go indeed through quite many during this hour. Furthermore, there are, as I was saying before, more than 50 FAQ already listed online, so you can go through also those elements. For those who connected a bit later today, I also invited you to have a look at the CBRS transparency platform, where you see example of projects. Actually you will see all the 5 projects that are currently in the list. You can also look at the approved project in the funding and tender portal for the CBRS when we talk about CEF supported project. So you can have a look also of the type of project we supported so far. There are not so many because we are a rather young program. But of course, we are looking forward to have many more, but it can give you a little indication, but take it really as just an example, because the sampling is very small, so it's far from being sort of a statistical example. All right, looks like there's no questions on Slido. So, but I think we had indeed we went through a lot of details. A big thank to all of you having connected and have it posted questions. Also to those who haven't posted questions, great that you were there. I hope that the session was useful to you to advance for your CBRS project. We hope to see you numerous and qualitative CBRS application. Many thanks to Vasil Steiner from the Commission, also connected today with us. And well, I think we just now it's time to, well, good luck to you, to your team working on the application, and we will stay in touch if you have any questions until the deadline, and after that there will be the evaluation, and hopefully for you, you will receive a positive answer around June in this year. So best of luck, many thanks, and we stay in touch if needed. Thank you. Thank you, Vasil.
Goodbye. Have a nice day.